Holly Scott, it's great to have you on MedTech Unboxed.
Great to be here, Steve. Thanks for the invite. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I love the content that the Mullings group puts out on a daily basis from so many different team members. And I was telling you, I had the opportunity to do some work with Joe, and it was just cool hanging out in the green room with him. But I'm grateful for that opportunity. And all of us in MedTech, on Sunday mornings, enjoy a cup of coffee and learn about what's new, the news going on in MedTech. And we really appreciate you sharing that with us.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to do it, to be totally sincere. I mean, I started it a few years ago because I really needed the self-study. It kept me honest, right? To actually go through and make sure I was caught up. And when I started sharing it, I started realizing that it does help people along the way kind of catch up and restart their week with the latest information. So look, for me, it's an opportunity to catch what I may have missed, to highlight some organizations and some efforts that may not otherwise be highlighted. So when I share my favorite, it's not always the biggest news for everyone, but it's my personal favorite for whatever reason. So it's a true pleasure. And, Steve, you do the same. You lift up the industry because you're clearly passionate about what you do and the market that you do it for. So we're in this together. And I think it's a shared responsibility and a privilege.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah. So I thought it would be a great idea to have you on the podcast to talk about, we're at the halfway point in the year pretty much, and talk about some of the, the leading themes so far this year and some of the top stories. I know you and I are both a little biased towards some of the top stories. So what actually are the top stories? I think we'll share some of those from our perspective, at least, right?
Yeah, no, it's great to do so. And I think it's, first of all, important for the audience to understand any of our favorite stories are not tied necessarily to clients or anything like that. They're just interesting stories that we find meaningful for the marketplace. So I'll try to avoid the big theme because I feel like everyone's heard enough about administrative changes and, the chaos ensued and such. I believe that there is a general climate of inoculation to the chaos at this point, right?
Yes.
We're, over 6 months in, and I see a trend of stability around instability that I'm embracing because we need to live in, the new norm on wherever these things land. From where I sit, gravitating towards, exclusively MedTech and gravitating primarily towards following private money, it's been a very good year. I mean, things are continuing to trend up. So, the big themes in terms of administration and state of investment, state of innovation, look, the general theme in our space is positive. We're seeing the first half investment swing up to $16.46 billion over $13.94 for the first half last year this time. So that's a really good sign. We're seeing, the IPO market, which I know we're going to dig into a bit, as well as the investment climate overall, also tick up. So, good themes to be had and good waves to ride.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let's get into it and maybe talk about some of these top stories.
Let's do it. Do it. Yeah, you tasked me with a tough one. You said, you write this every week. Pick your top five. I mean, that's like picking your favorite kid, right? I mean, come on, that's a little unfair. But no, I think the first one that jumped out was the Stryker and Ari deal. For a few different reasons. First of all, Stryker is one of my favorite companies to watch based on the way they move in the woods. Man, they are an incredible company. I love their leadership is stacked. They've got some incredible products from top to players in the field. Their quality is high, and this investment into the thrombectomy space is a power move. I mean, $4.9 billion. What do you think of this, Steve?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think if you look at Stryker, their revenue breakdown is like 60% roughly in the med surg, neurovascular space, and maybe 40 in the orthopedic, of course, Mako, right? And with that acquisition and the divestiture of their spine business, it skews that a little more. So it'll be interesting to see. They're being very active on the M&A market. It'll be interesting to see. I'm sure that's going to continue. So we'll see how that breakdown occurs over the course of the next couple of years.
Yeah, no doubt. I think they're certainly playing offense here, right? They're also, I mean, I know they're playing defense against BSC Medtronic when it comes to the actual buy itself, but the offense overall as an organization is clear. They are focusing and doubling down on the highest revenue opportunities, going from robotics into their med surge businesses, implants, materials. There's a lot of very highly simplified in a different way products compared to the complexity of a robotic system. And then now here we are going to go in a big way into another space. It's they don't they're not suffering fools, and they're not afraid to roll it, and push hard. And I do believe that gives them an edge overall in certain markets, especially in comparison with a more conservative pool of strategics.
Yeah. If I had a crystal ball and had to guess their next play, it could be the intravascular lithotripsy space you saw last year. That huge. If we were doing this last year, it would have been the acquisition of Shockwave, probably by J&J, right? But that space is very active. I think you noted the Boston Scientific and made a play in that space more recently as well.
Yeah, exactly. And there's some really great companies in that space. I mean, I know Scott Nelson at Fastway, very cool technology. I mean, there's a couple players there. That market's just getting cracked open. There's certainly room for other big plays. So that'll be exciting to watch. And again, one for the first half that set us off on the right tone for good activity for 2025.
Right. Okay, cool. Let's move on.
Yeah, let's do it. Kestra Medical. So Kestra, it went public with $202 million in an IPO, which is in itself, in its own right, a pretty big statement. There were a couple other IPOs this first half that are worth mentioning. I also want to mention Beta Bionics. They may not have been my top story, but that is a incredible technology, artificial, pancreas for diabetics. That's just, that whole space has got so much potential. But Kestra in particular, the wearable defib, and that's been a market that I've followed for many years, and it took a long time before an organization was really able to figure it out, to where not only is it clinically sufficient, but it's got the usability factor that works well with the patient population, that it's serving. So I thought it was pretty interesting.
Absolutely, and to kind of reinforce what you said earlier, that the money's flowing. I believe that they initially during the IPO thought they'd maybe raise $100 million, but they doubled it, right? So good indication there.
Yeah, good indication for sure, and a good indication for the IPO climate overall, that the IPOs that have taken place, there's been 4, have been at expectations or higher than expectations. So what does that mean? Investor appetite's getting better, and that's good. Look, the public money moves. That helps private money move. That helps everyone reinvest, and it helps our garden grow, so to speak.
Yeah, I think if we see some potential drops in interest rates, that would probably help as well.
Yeah, for a whole bunch of reasons.
Yes.
That's hopefully a theme that as the public markets open up, we will see some better signs. I'm a little disappointed in some of the news I've seen this week in reference to economic impact, but the reality is a lot of those stories were being played a year ago that didn't pan out. Yeah. So I'm following the money trends, and I'm following the innovation. And when the products are solid and they have the right mission, the right market, the right reimbursement story, the right leadership to take them there, they're getting the funding. And if the funding comes and they meet expectations, it just continues to follow on. So I'm going with the positive headwinds positive tailwinds I'm seeing.
Okay. The reimbursement's the key there. We just talked about the lithotripsy therapy, and it's there for that. It's another reason why that therapy is so attractive in that market.
Yeah, no, exactly. Well,
Yeah.
it works. It's tried and true, and it's,
Right.
there shouldn't be the reimbursement hurdle given the proofs, but that's me speaking, not
Yeah.
not CMS or anyone else. So
Right.
hopefully it'll get up to the right channels.
Okay. Great. There was some other activity, I believe, a lot of activity in the structural heart space as well, right?
Yeah, structural heart, the first half, and even coming off of 2024, structural heart has been a real hot area in a somewhat slower market for the for a few years. What we saw happen in post-COVID times with the huge investment that went on in COVID into technologies that had digital orientation, we saw a nice swing back towards block and tackle, solving mechanical issues, and that therein lies structural heart. Just a sweet spot for structural heart in terms of opportunity. So yeah, I mean 4C, I think they raised 174 million. Capstan, which Capstan's, got a bit of a robotic edge to it as well, which makes it fun, but that's 110 million. Cardiac dimensions in the mitral space, 53 millions. MeCore, 15 million Series A. And I'm seeing firsthand, I really like the tricuspid space because it's, the forgotten valve that a lot of clinicians were just not enticed to treat or not able to in an effective way. And we're seeing some pretty neat therapies that are coming out and making a otherwise extremely cumbersome procedure very simple.
Yes.
And that simplicity is able to open up a patient population that may not otherwise have had the opportunity to be treated. So great space. It's a really good space. We expect that to continue for sure.
Yeah, you mentioned the population for treatment, and I think one of the headwinds in that space, it keeps growing, but one of the minor headwinds is that a younger population of people are getting these heart valve replacements. So it brings up this concern about durability, where some hospitals, surgeons for younger population are going back to the surgical valve and not the transvascular. So Philly, that's a little bit of a, I think, technical challenge that the development engineers need to work on. I recently did a podcast with a gentleman from Foldax, a wonderful company that has developed a full polymer valve. The frame is not a nitinol or steel or stainless steel frame. It's a PEEK frame. It's a high performance polymer. It's got PTFE on it, and the leaflets are full polymer, polyurethane with like a silicone in it, and some really great results they're having. And I think they just released recently, got acceptance in India. So following them as well. Yeah,
there's incredible opportunity for the retreatment possibility, because you're 100% right. I mean, the younger population, the kids with congenital heart issues that have to get retreated for a lifetime, that population thankfully can be treated and can live a long, average lifespan, but they need intervention all along the way. And so often the early stages of replacement valves and repair systems didn't allow for retreatment. So that's huge. Another one in that space that's kind of interesting based on biomimetric properties is Enteris. They have some interesting biologic properties. I think you'd enjoy doing a little research on them just based on your orientation. Yeah.
I'll do that. Thank you for that. All right, let's move on. Or do we have, I did want to talk a little bit about Sapira, if you could add that, and I think I'm a little biased because I love the Shifamed model, and I know you do as well. And I did a podcast with Nitin about Sapira and some of their recent clinicals and fundraising. And I just love that, percutaneous heart pump. There's some unmet needs in that space with Abiomed, and they're coming out with this lower profile delivery system for more deliverability and also less trauma on the patient. So I don't know if you want to touch on that a little bit as well.
Oh yeah, they're one of the, the Shifa Med model is one of my favorite in the industry
Yeah.
for a few reasons. One that you hit on, they can work on the tough stuff because they've attracted elite players with substantial experience that really bring to the table the cerebral horsepower that they need, therefore building the teams of engineers and the people that need to focus on it. They're able to do it because they have the backing and the shared resources with that model. That creates such an opportunity when you don't have to worry about the operational inefficiencies as a startup and funding.
Yeah.
And how are we going to track the team when no one knows us? These factors are all compounded and make things much, much more difficult. So the Shifa Med model is really powerful.
Yeah. Great point. Okay. Want to move on to number 3?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, again, my third that I mentioned, I loved the Can Do Health, where Neurolutions moved into a BCI company targeting stroke care. And, I have to smile when I say BCI because it seems like it's this huge buzzword that all of a sudden is a buzzword, but it's been around for a long time in the space of neuromodulation, and implantables. But I like Can Do because, first of all, I think the Neurolution story, as well as just anything that Kestravi's behind, is phenomenal. Again, high impact players, but watching and facilitating the patient experience from early diagnosis and getting into the appropriate interventional channels, and then following up, getting them out of the hospital safely, getting them monitored and getting them managed with better recovery tools at home, but managed. In the days of early MedTech, 20 years ago, you had very different companies that were focusing on these very different applications, and to have them all chunk away at the healthcare system and the buyers, it not only is it very difficult to sell and commercialize, it's difficult for the hospital and clinical community to understand and be able to work with. So this is so beneficial, these kinds of streamlined approaches where you have the patient cared for and really handheld through the entire process with an organization that's equipped to do it. I love that.
Yeah. It's an interesting story. I was reading the press release, and some of the clinical data is compelling, right? And I'll just read it. Clinical post-acute care evidence demonstrated that more than 80% of stroke patients achieved independent living at 90 days, and readmission rates for these patients are approximately 50% lower than those in published literature. So very compelling results.
That is incredible, compelling results. It really is. And it's something, you got to give them kudos, because the post-acute experience is so incredibly hard to get your arms around and actually efficiently work with and get those kind of results. So there's serious attention that's gone into that, and it's paying off. It's paying off for the patients. So that's great.
Great. Well, I'm going to watch that one. One of the great things about this, what we're doing here, is some of these companies I'm not familiar at all with, and so it forced me to kind of look into them. And now, like you mentioned earlier, I'm going to do a little further research and follow some of these companies closer. This is amazing, this one.
Likewise, that's why we're chatting, because you know your stuff, I know my stuff. We like to share our stuff. It's good stuff.
Right. It's good stuff. All right, let's move on. We have a couple more. 2 more, right? Of course, this next one, I'll let you lead it, but the whole AI space, and it's amazing. A year ago, I was like, it seems like it's a year and a half old from my perspective, and it's just amazing to see the growth. And there's a couple amazing stories there. I'll let you share.
Yeah, no, maybe your audience has heard the name NVIDIA. Maybe, I don't know. They were a headline for me twice in the first half. And AI, look, AI is in our business world, and it's not going away. It's in our daily world, and it's not going away, and it's only going to continue to penetrate.
Mhm.
And in the MedTech sector, NVIDIA is the preferred partner with most of the major strategics in the medical device space. And what are they doing? They're looking at that as their AI partner for their sophisticated intelligence around imaging, around robotics, that healthcare ecosystem integration, and EHR. What's going to be interesting is we have to be mindful of what we may want to call like that last mile, right? The way the data and information are actually utilized in a beneficial way is going to take the right interpreter. And the right interpreter, almost like a product person would be in a med tech startup, somebody who really understands what the clinician needs and what R&D needs. We need someone who understands. We're going to need that leader in these organizations within an NVIDIA, within the sectors, that can speak the language of a med tech company, speak the language of clinicians, yet understands what a fast-paced technology company is doing and will need real time, because they are dramatically different organizations just by their makeup and by their focus.
Yeah.
So the partnerships are great, and they're going to be beneficial, and they're not going to slow down. I do believe it'll create opportunity from a career development perspective for individuals to really bridge these technology, clinical missions that we're on.
Yeah. It's hard to believe that they're the first to achieve 4 trillion market cap, and before Apple and Microsoft, right? It's amazing.
It really is. I was surprised when I read that too, and that was my first thought. I was like,
Yeah.
really? The first?
Yeah.
The first? Now, I don't know where they're at this moment, but I understand it was kind of a short-term thing, and then they got competitive with the other companies again. But the reality is they crashed the threat. They crossed the threshold of it, so they claimed the prize of the first to do it. And they're a powerhouse. They can't be ignored.
Gosh, I'd say. Thanks for covering that. There's also there was a good an article that you shared on LinkedIn, and maybe you covered some of that just a minute ago about I think this David, how do you pronounce this? Niewolny.
Yes.
It was interesting if you want to touch on that a little bit.
Yeah. He was sharing how important, these partnerships are, and for NVIDIA too. This is a beneficial. Healthcare is in all times. This is why our firm has focused in healthcare as a firm that started as exclusively a headhunters 30 plus years ago. The economic resilience of the healthcare space is tried and true. Yeah. And as whether it's good or poor economic times, we all care about better health for us, for grandma, for our spouses, for our kids, whatever it might be. And NVIDIA, as a tech company supporting multiple industries, they went all in, and they were clear about wanting to focus and develop these partnerships. And these partnerships are locking out their competitors. So it's an interesting model. And boy, David's in an interesting seat for sure within that organization.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. All right, let's move on to number 5. And you had an interesting share here related to some new technology coming out of the university system, which we always love, right?
Yes.
Yeah, related to kind of a dissolvable pacemaker. I'll let you run with that.
So anything, again, is like is subjective, and my heart is all about the kids. I just absolutely love what they do in pediatrics. And imagine a child that's born with a heart issue. Now, the baby's hearts, and these are not even just preemies, but babies' hearts are typically no bigger than the size of a walnut. So if you think about their electrical system, if there's a pacing issue and you need to treat that, the instrumentation, the device, and then the implant have got to be hyper considered. So you think about something that is able to reset from a pacing perspective, and you and I exchanged a bit on this, the material selection and ability to be dissolvable, make this incredible for this organization, because for this patient population, because taking these pacemakers out can be as serious as putting them in if that's indeed needed downrange.
Yeah, this is one that I was really interested to learn about because I've been following the bioreabsorbable technology, polymer technology is something I've been very passionate about. And if you think about that technology, how it's used for MedTech, the big story in 2016 was Abbott releasing this coronary bioreabsorbable stent, the Absorb. And they spent like $1 billion on developing it. Not even a year later, taken off the market. That probably wasn't the right approach to start in coronary, but because that didn't work out, the appetite for bioreabsorbable stents, scaffolds, technologies just dropped for 10 years, and nobody was really interested in getting involved. So that has changed a lot over the last couple of years. Abbott, in fact, they have grit. They came back and came up with their Esprit, which is a peripheral vascular bioreabsorbable stent. And there's some other companies that I've been following. Ephemeral is another one. They have a segmented bioreabsorbable stent. So the idea of a device delivering therapy, mechanical properties, and then totally disappearing over time is a novel and amazing technology platform.
Certainly is. And I mean, I'm old enough to remember hearing about Staples doing the same and thinking exactly what you just shared. That exact statement was, what? This has mechanical properties and it can actually resorb right into the body.
Right.
So this is where we are. Thankfully, we're in science. They were ambitious going after coronary. The challenge with coronary is you have the good side of so many cases, and you have cardiologists generally or have a high appetite for trying new things.
Yes.
The peripheral market, though, is a better bet because there's not any good solutions right now.
Right.
And the fact that that is such a difficult area to treat, that if you can show something that actually works, there's just too many other options right now in coronary. So that's going to be tougher. But look, Abbott's got to get credit for continuing to push it.
Right. Excellent. Yeah, love that story. Okay, we covered the top 5. I think that was great. I think our listeners collectively are going to love this, kind of get a recap for the year. So I really thank you so much for that.
Well, I appreciate being asked, Steve. This was a lot of fun, and it gave me a chance to reflect too, and actually pinch myself and say, I can't believe how fast it's gone too.
Right.
Here we are, halfway through. But general theme for the balance of the year, what's your thoughts going into the second half? Anything that you're looking forward to or anticipating?
You know what I speak for a lot of contract manufacturers. I think we're looking forward to this destocking issue. Like a lot of the device companies are holding on still to a lot of inventory, which is creating some headwinds in the contract manufacturing space. So a company that would typically grow 10, 15% per year, they're growing, 6 to 10 per year because of this inventory. And somebody told me just yesterday of a well-known surgical robotics company that was sitting on an amazing amount of inventory. It's like, how did that even happen? So that's causing some, like I said, some headwinds in the contract manufacturing space. And we're hoping that that'll resolve itself.
Is that directly attributed to the tariff talk, or?
No, I think it actually kind of goes back to the COVID, supply chain challenges that people were having. They're just stocking up, stock up. So everybody was stocking up, and now we're still trying to wean off that inventory.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's one of the major headwinds in the MedTech contract manufacturing space. It's all still positive, but the growth isn't where it has been because of that. That's one of the contributing factors, though.
So that's very interesting. So I learned a lot too today.
Yeah.
So thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, we'll have to, the second half of the year, we'll have to do this again.
I'd love to. And maybe you need to visit again. How about that? Come down
deal.
and listen studio.
Okay. That's a deal. I'll do that. I'd love to do that.
Yeah,
Okay.
I love it. Thank you
right.
again. Appreciate
Thanks,
your
Molly.
time.
All right. Bye-bye.